Well, folks, I'm joined on the line by a gentleman I've been trying to get on the show for a hell of a long time, if nothing else but to have a bit of a grumble and a moan, and of course that is Mr. Greg Hart. Welcome to Rock Posers Roulette.
Hello, Dan. Yeah, is it time for a moan already, is it?
Well, unfortunately, it's not a 2-hour show, otherwise we wouldn't get it all fitted in, because, I mean, let's face it, when you and I start chatting, it tends to turn into a bit of a moan.
We need to have a bar next to us for a start, don't we, really?
Well, let's start off with the good stuff, and my opinion being what it is, all I can say is the new Cats in Space album is absolutely fantastic.
Marvellous, thank you very much.
It's if there's one thing I generally moan about on an album, and it's production, and it's got to be said, production on this is fantastic. It sounds absolutely superb. It shows that you guys have put so much time, effort and sweat into this release.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Without question, and money, of course. Don't forget.
Well, there is that as well. I didn't want to mention that too early.
No, yeah. I mean, well, where to begin, really? I mean, from day one, I knew that the project was going to be anything but easy to do, because obviously we're trying to replicate stuff that was going on in the 70s, possibly early 80s. Although I don't like to touch into that decade at all, if I can help it. And I just thought, well, if it's going to have to be done properly. After about sort of 4 or 5 of the songs, you know, once they were demoed and stuff, it was very, very apparent that this was not going to be a knock-it-out kind of cheeky little project. It was going to develop into something really big. Otherwise, you know, it wouldn't have done it justice. So I just had to commit to it fully a long time ago, and then worry about all the nuts and bolts of how it was going to be logistically achieved, sort of, as we went along. And God bless everybody that came on board. They've been amazing and shared the vision, and it just grew out of control, mate. It really did. But I knew that if I was going to do something, it's got to be done properly. Otherwise people just go, yeah, sort of get it, but it doesn't sound like it does, like it did in the old days. You know, if you're going to tackle ELO, Queen and Supertramp and City Boy and bands like that had huge budgets, it's mad to even attempt it, to be honest. But I thought, well, I'll give it a go and I'll do as best as I can and use the technology that was at my disposal and get the best people in to do the job. And it did fall into place, but it was not easy. I've got to say, it was a long, long process to do this.
Well, for one of a use of a cliche, really for you it's a labour of love.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was. I mean, I've been trying to sum up how I can sort of, like, you know, in interviews and stuff, how I can sort of say it to make it sort of clear for everybody. But the bottom line is, I just had enough of the AOR thing. I don't want to go on about the AOR thing too much, because, you know, I've done that and I've done a lot of it, and I've got very bored and stale of it, and I don't want to diss it because it's still a great genre of music. But for me personally, I just felt that nowadays there's so much of it going on. It's like wading through treacle, as I've said many times, and I was not going to dip my toe into that treacle anymore. And I thought, I can't be honest to myself and churn out another album that might sound a bit like Survivor. You know, I wanted to dig in further and sort of expand on what the Last Maritz album was, the SOS album, which obviously went down absolutely amazing with so many people, and we were blown away by that. I mean, we all, again, that was another labour of love, but unfortunately for me, it opened the door to where I really wanted to go, and I wanted to explore the 70s and my sort of passion for the music that I really loved a lot more, to be honest. And that's so it was a labour of love, but it's one of those things, you know. I mean, even though I'm sort of known for the AOR stuff and have been since the 80s, my heart always lied with 70s pop and rock music, and it never went away. I just moved with the times a little bit and went with Journey and Foreigner and that kind of stuff. But when I was at home, I just still used to play all my Sweet albums, Slade albums, John Miles and Queen and all that lot, and I thought, sod it, now's the time for me to try and make the album that I always really wanted to do, and that's hopefully what I've achieved.
Well, if nothing else, let's face it, there's an awful lot of samey stuff about at the moment, and I've said it on more than one occasion. So if nothing else, this album, although it's, I suppose retro is not a word I want to throw in, but let's use it for now. Although it's a retro album, it is a refreshing change from all the other stuff that's out at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, everyone said this, you know. I mean, again, I wrote this album, you know, with Mick Wilson from 10cc, and when we get together, you know, we just hit it off from day one when we first started writing the Janie Bombshell album with Janie a few years ago. We all just totally tuned in. I just thought, here's a guy that I've been waiting to write with all my life, you know. And we just sat in his studio writing this stuff for Cats in Space, and yes, it was retro, but I did have very strict guidelines, and it wasn't preconceived. It just came out as it did, and everybody that's heard it, you know, God bless them, they've all said it's retro, but somehow we've managed to make it sound fresh.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I mean, fresh maybe from the recording process, probably, but even in the recording process, without going into technical jargon, I would not allow any modern equipment in the whole process. I wanted it to be, everything was old. There's nothing new. Everything on that album, although it's eventually been digitised, because you have to do it nowadays.
Of course.
It was recorded through an analogue desk with old musical equipment, keyboards, guitars, everything, even old mics. In the end, I don't think we used anything new at all. And it sort of gave it this sound, if you like. But it is still predominantly a very retro sounding album, but that was the whole idea. And maybe it's fresh because nobody's doing it. It reminds me a little bit, I mean, you know, I'm sure people might have different opinions, but when Thunder came out in 1989, I remember turning around to a few of my mates when we saw them, and although I'm not a Bad Company fan, I don't really like that kind of music as much, we said this is just a breath of fresh air, because it's not following what all the other bands are doing at that time, which is obviously the big hair stuff and all that kind of thing. And yet we thought it's fresh, but it wasn't. And maybe in some sort of way we're the same. We've just gone where our heart lies, been totally honest with it, and it's come out fresh, maybe.
Well, I've already said to you what my favourite track on the album is.
Oh, go on. No, you haven't, have you?
Yeah, I did. I shall remind you.
There should be 12, mate, not one.
Now, this is one track that I've come back to again and again and played more than any other track on the album, and that's The Greatest Story Never Told. I mean, it is a phenomenal track. Absolutely superb. I mean, Mike Moran has done a superb job on it, and it's just a track I keep coming back to and playing again and again. I mean, that's 7 minutes of pure joy as far as I'm concerned. Brilliant.
I mean, that's the best thing I could have heard, if nothing else, because it is the most expensive track on the album. But I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when we was at Hard Rock Hell a few years ago, we was having a beer at the back, and I said to you that I'm already working on stuff that was going to be the next Maritz album, and that track started then. That was the track. And me and Ian Edwards from Maritz demoed The Greatest Story Never Told, although at the time it was completely different. And it was the song that sort of divided Maritz into two camps. I have to say, it's the sort of like, you know, it turned into the devil, you know, because they were going, amazing, but it's not right for Maritz. And I'm going, I think it's amazing, and it's where I need to go, because it had the John Miles, Alan Parsons sort of vibe. So when the Cats in Space thing started moving down the road a bit, that song was always going to be the centerpiece of the album, and I actually based the whole album around it. And it wasn't until quite late in the day that I thought, everything sounds so amazing so far, that song needs the full treatment. It was based actually quite similar to Elton John Blue Moves, his album, a track on that album called One Horse Town, and I loved the orchestration on it, and I thought, Mike Moran's the man for this, and I know Mike very well, and God bless him, he's been a very, very dear friend to me over the years. I learned so much from him back in the 90s. I mean, the man is a genius. He's played with everybody. Who he hasn't played with is worth noting, you know. It's Stevie Wonder down, you know what I mean? It's just everybody. And I sort of cheekily asked him, hello, Mike, would you mind doing some orchestration on this track? And even he, in the end, said, this has turned into a monolith of a piece of music. And he did everything. He orchestrated an 80-piece orchestra, played all the keyboards, and then we put the drums and the bass and the guitars and the vocals on, and I wanted it to be a duet with Mick Wilson and Paul Manzi. And I was worried, because I thought, if I don't pull this off, it's going to sound awful. And then when I sat down and listened to just the backing of the orchestration up at Mike's studio, several months ago now, I was just floored, literally floored by what he had done. And Adam, his engineer, looked round at me and said, "Do you like it?" I was like, "How can I even explain that?" You know, it was, and I was so pleased, and it has turned into probably the best thing I've ever done, to be totally honest. You know, from a musical piece, I mean, that is sort of my sort of, you know, my little sort of brain ticking away trying to make the best thing I could do. But Mike scored that out, and, you know, that's what he does. You know, he is a genius, and thank God he's on our album. I'm glad you like it, because it's a very brave move to do a 7-minute epic with an orchestra on your first album. Is a brave move. But. It
is indeed, but you've pulled it off, mate. I mean, that just the John Miles style keyboards. I mean, that was enough for me. I mean, that the volume level went up, shall we say, rather a lot at that point.
And what about the vocals on it? I mean, yeah, I'm very, very lucky to have these guys playing on the album. You know, this isn't just all down to me. You know, I've got incredible players around me, you know.
Well, I mean, the people involved. I mean, Paul Manzi, I've been a fan of his vocals for quite a long time. I obviously know Paul from, obviously, the work he's done with Arena.
Yeah, brilliant.
Which obviously is something a little bit different. Obviously, those of you not familiar with Arena is for want of a better phrase, is a prog rock band with a bit of a twist to my mind. They're not 100% prog. There's all sorts of other elements as far as I'm concerned with it. But what he's done on this, vocal-wise, as you say, I mean, his input has been huge.
Oh, and he's such a top man. I mean, I've played live with him many times in my 70s show.
Of course.
He deps for us, and that's when I first met him, and he came in with this big, massive hair like Brad Delp out of Boston to do this 70s pop show singing Puppy Love, and we all looked round and I thought, I hope he gets this. And he totally embraces what he does. And he's got no rock bullshit about him. He hasn't got this, I don't know if it's right for me because I'm a rock singer. He just embraces singing. And I just fell in love with his voice straight away. And he's got this almost, for me, he's got a Terence Trent D'Arby soul lilt in his voice. And then he can go and do Bruce Dickinson all in the same breath. So, you know, after like 10 seconds of listening to him rehearse with us last Christmas, I just thought, he's the singer for Cats in Space, without a doubt. And bearing in mind, Mick Wilson was demoing all the vocals, and that's a pretty tough act to even get near, is to replicate and replace his vocals on the tracks. And Paul just jumped at it, and he's been brilliant. To have him and Mick on the same track is just, you know, it's double whammy, really, I think.
Well, it is. Obviously, first single off the album, Mr. Heartache, and of course, probably most of you will have seen the video for it. And it's a great video, it is as well. Absolutely love the look of the video, and I know the effort that went in for doing that. But again, it's an effort well worth, the just rewards that I hope you're going to get off the back of it.
I hope so. I mean, again, Kenny Evans is our video man. He's done videos for me for years, Kenny. And again, he's just another genuinely amazing, talented person that does these videos. And he came in, I played him all the tracks, demos off the album, and he said, "Greg, you've just done it again. This is something else, you know." And he just wanted to be involved, and he's done videos for me for God knows, 7-8 years now, probably, Kenny. And he just come up with this concoction of what Mr. Heartache could be, and did a brilliant job. And it sort of lends to the retroness of it a bit as well, because we didn't want to do a knock it up and shooting down video, because at the end of the day, you know, we're 50-year-old blokes sort of trying to look as good as we can, and we don't want to try and make out it's anything that it isn't. But I wanted it to be quirky. Obviously, if the budget was there, we would have probably have used a lot more of the space element of the band. But again, he's done an amazing job. You know, I'm just lucky that I got these people that are just hitting the bullseye with everything they do at the moment. It's brilliant.
Well, let's talk about, obviously, who else is in it. Obviously, you're joined by your colleague from, not only, of course, Maritz, but obviously from the Supersonic Temperatures. Obviously, Andy Stewart is there, tinkling away on the old ivories and doing a great job of that as well.
Yes.
Top bloke, Andy is. Absolutely great guy. But I mean, let's go through the list. I mean, you've got Stevie Bacon, obviously, doing drums and percussion, Dean on guitar, Jeff Brown on bass, and obviously we've already mentioned Mick Wilson, and of course we can't get away without mentioning Andy Scott.
No. Well, again, when me and Mick first started the project, just over a year ago, the very first song me and Mick got together to write before it was even a project, we just had it written down as Project 70s, was Mr. Heartache. And he loved it and said, can I have this for my second solo album? To which I replied, well, yeah, because I've got nothing going on at the moment. I don't know how I'm going to go about what I'm doing. So he sort of ran with the ball. And for some reason, he said, do you know what? I can hear Andy Scott singing on this out of the suite. So he rung him up because he had his number, because he had done a gig with him weeks previous. And before I know it, the following day, we was going down to Andy's studio in Wiltshire, which for me was a bit of... I've met Andy a few times over the years, but only in the pub and just to say hello to, and a bit of a chin wag through mutual sort of acquaintances. But this was different. This was me going into the studio with my idol, the man that made me pick up a guitar in whenever it was. I just thought, this is a bit odd, you know, and it was just amazing. It was a fantastic day, and Andy just sang typical Andy Scott, shrill, high falsetto vocals on the track, and he also played chunk guitar as well. And I just thought, this is just a bit surreal for me, you know, just writing this song and Andy Scott's on it. And then he phoned up a couple of days later to say how much he enjoyed it, and you know, really, you know, wishes all the best. And in fact, me and Mick, you know, are sort of lining up to do a bit more writing with him as well. And one thing led to another, and the sort of Mick's album sort of got put on hold a bit because he got so waylaid with the ELO gig and then 10cc touring, and he sort of said, I'm going to put it on the back burner for a bit. Do you want Mr. Heartache for your new project, which didn't have a name at that time? So I went, yep, I'll have that. and eventually, it just, again, everything that's happened so far, it's just snowballed. I've sort of like lit the blue touch paper and retired, and everything's just grown organically on its own. And before you know it, we've got this amazing track that I said, if that's anything, it's going to be the first single. And eventually, when the boys all came on board to join the band, without question of a doubt, they all said, well, Mr. Heartache's got to be the first single, surely, and that's why.
Well, finally, one thing which is obviously of no surprise, considering what the project is and knowing your good self, thank God it's coming out on vinyl.
Well, you know, it wouldn't be happening if it didn't. I've been saying it for years.
It would be bizarre if it hadn't come out on vinyl, I must admit. I mean, if there's a project that screams vinyl, it's this. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I won't do anything unless it's coming out on vinyl. I mean, I'm so dyed-in-the-wool 70s, as you know, Dan. You know? And I just thought, if this don't come out on vinyl, then people are going to go, he's half-cocked it. And like I said, I've fully committed to this. I mean, the album's it's cost a lot more than probably most people's albums have nowadays. It's been done in a big old-fashioned studio. You know, it's got orchestra, it's got the whole lot. It's got, you know, all the things that I loved about the 70s. When you go down the record shop on a Saturday and you run back home, you take the inner sleeve out, start reading the lyrics, put the disc on, sit on your bed, and you lose yourself for 40 minutes and you listen to the album as it's meant to be listened to. You know, as I've said many times, and I'll bore people to death with it, the stuff that I do is not designed to be shuffled on some iPad as you're going about doing your business and not really paying attention to it. It's not wallpaper music, you know. It's meant to be gatefold vinyl album music, and that's, you know. And I've you know, the Maritz album came out on vinyl a few years ago, and we were just so chuffed to see it, you know.
Well, you know, I got a copy of that, and you know, I'm a die-hard vinyl fan.
It's got to be done, mate. And I truly believe that nowadays, if people are going to invest into new products, or even when they reissue like old products, people just want the vinyl for, if nothing else, for nostalgia reasons and for collectability, you know. And this is a very limited vinyl release that we're doing in a gatefold sleeve. It's got this unique, amazing gatefold artwork like an old Yes album sleeve would have. And I sort of commissioned a local artist to do all the 6 cats in space on the moon, you know, with old relics and stuff, and it's really, really cool. And it's coming out on heavy duty vinyl. It'll be out on CD, but again, the CD is a replica album sleeve, so I've tried to keep it all as old school as possible. And there's loads of goodies going on the website as well. There's t-shirts, there's limited edition prints that everybody's signed the album artwork, and you can win a guitar on there called the Cat Strat. We're, like I said, fully committed to this, and hopefully we'll go out on the road with it next year and you know, try and replicate it live, and then get onto album 2, of course, which has actually already started.
What? Well, that wasn't the question I was going to bring up, because let's face it, that is one of the stock questions. But I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you've answered it.
What was that? What was the stock question there?
One of the stock questions is, are you working on the next album yet? And obviously you've already answered that.
Well, to be honest, we overshot the first album. There's 2 tracks on this album. One is called Man in the Moon, and one is called Only in Vegas. And Only in Vegas was a throwaway song that I was writing as a B-side, or an extra track for whatever reason, and it just grew these legs, and it nudged out 2 epic tracks, or 1 epic track and 1 other really strong track that I wrote with Mick Wilson. Both are very Queen orientated. So to them to drop off the album, I was sort of like, ooh dear, that's going on to album 2 then. So yeah, album 2 is already in the pipeline. It's probably already half written, and there's possibly, if I can persuade all the people that were involved the first time round, there's possibly the follow-up to The Greatest Story Never Told is actually a part 2.
Oh, so don't tease me like that, Greg.
Yeah, and it will be probably about 7 minutes long again. So it's another part of the epic. It might even be a trilogy, I don't know yet, but it was always going to be 1 and 2 parts, and I didn't want to put both parts on the album, because otherwise the album would have been 6 songs long,
Yeah.
But yes, Dan, there's going to be part 2, all going well. It will happen, and if I can get Mike Moran to do the same on it, it will follow on. So there's something to look out for.
Well, let's just remind folks that obviously the album Too Many Gods is out October the 2nd. It's on Harmony Factory.
No, sorry, the people are misprinting that. It's actually going to be out on Halloween.
Is it?
It's on Halloween mainly because the vinyl process nowadays, there's no guarantee of when they come back from the manufacturing.
Well, let's face it, there's a queue at the moment at the vinyl factories.
Mate, do you know what? I've heard from some people that it can take up to 5 months to get vinyl in. And we've been promised 60 plus days, and it turns out I might get it back around mid-October. So by the time I get it back and get it ready with all the people and all the distributors and all the people that are helping the band out at the moment, I'm sort of playing it safe. And I thought, what better day to release your album than Halloween? Cats in Space coming down on Halloween. Pre-order it, but you will be able to pre-order everything from the website from around about September the 11th, because like I said, it's limited edition. There's going to be loads of these, we call it the Cat in the Hat bundle, and there's 2 bundles on there you can buy and get loads of discount if you buy all the stuff in these bundles. So that will be coming out early September. I think about September the 11th we're going to aim to get the website shop live for people to pre-order.
Well, Greg, I wish you all the best for this album.
Thank you, mate. Much appreciated. And thank you for the kind comments, because, we are blown away, seriously.
Well, I'll be honest with you. If nothing else, I'm always honest with you, mate. And it's I am thoroughly enjoying it. Guys, if you've not heard any of the stuff, go and check out. Even if Mr. Hartack only partly grabs you, trust me, the rest of the album will grab you by the throat, and you'll be playing it to death, because it is something that is long overdue onto the airwaves and onto the record decks and CD players. And I say, the best of luck, Greg. I'd love to see you guys take it out on the road, and already chomping a bit for part 2.
No problem, mate. It'll all be coming. You know me, man of my word.
Cheers now, Greg.
Thanks again. Thanks to everybody out there that's sort of listening to this, and hopefully going onto the websites and Facebook and stuff and leaving all the comments, because we can't even get to them all now because there's so many coming in from all around Europe. We can't sort of reply to them all, but thank you to everybody that's out there doing it. It's making our job very worthwhile.